I'm very excited for Naughty Dog's next game based on this leaked information that comes from MinMax founder Ben Hansen. I don't have a problem with Ben. I don't like his two co-hosts. They're a bunch of dicks. But Ben Hansen seems like a good egg. But I was always thinking he's out of there, especially now that he's directed an episode of the show. The show is an Emmy-nominated, Emmy-winning show. His episode was actually quite good. It wasn't like, oh, this was like something we had to give Neil or he would not support us. I don't fucking know. But it was a good episode of The Last of Us, the TV series. Really good stuff. So I was like, okay, you're going to make more money making movies, Neil Druckmann. You're going to have, you're not going to have more creative control. That's for sure. At least not for a long time. You're just getting started in that world. But you're going to make a lot more money and you're going to have a lot more influence over the culture. How is he going to come back to games and be happy? I don't know. I don't know if he's directing their new game, but here's what the rumor is about the new Naughty Dog game, which I absolutely love. And I'm going to give you my theory on what they're riffing on. This is coming from the podcast from Ben Hansen. He says, somebody very in the know who worked on the game is who gave him this data. He says, the tone was like, you are all not ready for how amazing this thing is going to be. And the tone was, this is Ben talking about his friend at Naughty Dog. I'm not going to say the game that they referenced to compare it to, because I don't want people to be like MinMax said it was going to be exactly like this. But they compared it to a game with a lot of player freedom. He added that the Naughty Dog game was, the title was compared to was not Hitman. I guess some people had been speculating it. Naughty Dog head Neil Druckmann said last year he'd like the studio to focus less on traditional narrative in the future. Okay. So now listen. I love this for Naughty Dog. I loved The Last of Us Part 2. I thought The Last of Us Part 1 was pretentious. I didn't care for it. I think Neil Druckmann is the wrong guy to make Uncharted games. He's too serious. At least he seems to be. I know he worked on Uncharted 3, but Uncharted 4 was his baby, from soup to nuts. And I thought it was dreary and slow and repetitive, and it lacked the spirit that Nathan Drake needs to have. So, I don't know where he sits with me yet, although I thought Last of Us Part 2 was great, and I thought, and I think he's a talented fellow, right? So I think about it, and I don't think they're going to abandon narrative work. But I love the fact that he's going, I'm keeping my ear to the ground on what's happening in video games. He's not just like, I'm just going to keep on keeping on. I'm going to work with the team, whether he directs it or not. I'm going to work with the team, and we are going to continue, we're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep exploring where the medium is going. And I don't know if Elden Ring is the game that they are looking to. I actually don't think it is. My guess would be it's The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is probably Naughty Dog's next game. Now, in the Naughty Dog version of Tears of the Kingdom, I don't mean thematically. I don't mean that. I mean player freedom-wise. The fact that in that game, you were able to really get in there and utilize a lot of different ways to move through the space. And the idea of taking that philosophy of freedom and merging it with more of the Naughty Dog sensibilities of narrative, I think is a really cool sweet spot, if that indeed is where they're going. Because the biggest fault I find in the last two Zelda games, and I understand that it's part of the appeal for a lot of people, whatever, but it is so empty and foggy and windy and quiet, and the protagonist, Link doesn't talk really, and it's very dreamlike and ethereal, and I get some people love that. That's great. Enjoy that. I appreciate those games a great deal. They're wonderful in a lot of ways. But the idea of giving someone the player freedom that a game like Zelda, the new Zeldas do, but actually going in and saying, hey, we are going to also still create compelling characters, and we are still going to let you live out a really, really cool story, which I don't think Zelda does. I'm not saying Link and Zelda are not compelling characters. They are visually, but conceptually, they're ciphers. They're empty. But I like this. I like this, even if they're basing it off Elden Ring, but I hope not, because Elden Ring is great. And Brett Moore says Neil has been quoted that he likes how FromSoft handles their stories. Yeah, I do too. But the freedom that Elden Ring gives you is excellent, but I don't think that's what most people take from Elden Ring. I could be wrong. I think you look at something like Tears of the Kingdom, and I think you think about Naughty Dog going, what could we do? That makes sense. That makes sense to me. So that's all we know. All we know is this thing from Ben Hansen, who's basically leaking some stuff based on somebody in the know at Naughty Dog or Sony. But sounds pretty good. And I would love to see, I don't know if Neil's directing it or not, but I would love to see a new IP, like a lot of people, from Naughty Dog. And I really love that they're getting out of their way of this cinematic stuff. I would never want them to stop making those kind of games, but I'm sick of them. You know, I'm sick of them. One or two, fine. Make a new one, Santa Monica, whatever. But I'm tired of them. And frankly, they're not that good. They're good, but they're not that good. As video game stories, yes, sure. And maybe that's the other thing Neil took away from working on Last of Us. It's like, as a I would never put my ability to write in the camp of Naughty Dog or Neil or any of that. I'm not saying that. But the experience is the same of having worked in linear medium or worked on linear media and also worked on non-linear. And the minute you really get your hands in linear media, a lot of the stuff that you realize you have to fucking put up with in non-linear media, you're like, you got to lean into the fact that it's non-linear, is what I say. Because when you try to lean into more of a narrative linear experience, you're just like, why do I leave the house. In a movie, I leave the house and it cuts to where I am next. Now, there are some indie games that do jump cuts, but not many, and most people haven't embraced them. But I leave the house and I appear somewhere else. That's good storytelling. In a video game, if I leave the house, more often than not, I have to walk from the house, down the driveway, get in the car, or, just walk on the streets. And all of that is filler that you've got to make compelling that really comes at the harm of a story that you're trying to tell. So suddenly I could see Neil having gone, you know what? There's something about both mediums that can be shared, but let's get away from this assumption that we're making interactive movies. I'm just shooting the shit at this point. I don't have any evidence that that's what he's thinking, but let's put it this way. As a guy who respects his talent and respects that studio, I hope that's what he's thinking. I really hope that's what he's thinking, because I want to see Sony go there. I do not, and I didn't particularly like Ragnarok. That's the truth. I loved the production of it. It was brilliant. Level design was great. Puzzle design was pretty good. But no, I'm not walking around jonesing for another. Oh, all the characters are so somber. Maybe that's what bothers me. Aloy's all somber, and Kratos, and Ellie, and whatever his name is, the guy Joel. I'm just like, oh my God, pull the stick out of your ass. Have a little bit of fucking fun. You would think one franchise, maybe that's why I really have a bone to pick with Horizon, is you would think one fucking franchise Sony has that could be their fun franchise and not so fucking high school emo franchise would be fucking Horizon. Like I said, it's cavemen and dinosaurs. How can you not make a balls to the wall Michael Bay, Steven Spielberg summer blockbuster with that shit? I don't get it. I mean, I get it. Everybody, it worked for one team. Everybody's got to do it. Anyway. But that's what's happening with that. I'm excited. Hopefully we'll get some more news pretty soon.